fans, I am Jason Burgos for Sherdog.com, and tonight is a special occasion. In a totally surreal moment, I get to speak with a true legend in this industry. He needs no introduction, but I'm still going to go with the introduction anyway. I mean, former multi-time UFC heavyweight and light heavyweight champion, UFC Hall of Famer, Greco-Roman world champion, All-American, MMA coach, now MMA analyst, not even now, just been doing that for a long time too. He does everything. Also, longtime actor, Expendables. Who doesn't love Expendables? I mean, come on. Suffice to say, he has lived one amazing life, and that man is the natural himself. Randy Couture. Randy, thank you so much for giving me some time. This is truly an honor, a pleasure, surreal. This is weird right now for me.
Well, thanks, Jason. I appreciate that.
Now, first, were there any fighters that really surprised you with their performance in PFL Season 2? You know, Sordi and Habulayev really stood out for me. And on the flip side, were there guys you expected from that maybe, you know, didn't deliver on maybe the promise coming into the season, or, you know, from their reputation or from last year? Like, for example, Steven Seiler. You know, he went to the finals last year, didn't even win a fight this year.
Yeah, well, Seiler struggled a little. I think people have kind of figured out his wily style. Mm-hmm. One of the guys that surprised me, and I think people overlooked last season, who ended up being a champ, was Nathan Schultz. A lot of people thought that was a fluke, and I've seen him come out strong this season and really kind of back up the hype, back up what he did last season with real solid performances. I mean, Magomed Kirimov has been as solid as they come. Mm-hmm. I always love watching Ray Cooper Jr. compete. I mean, he just brings a special ferocity every time he fights. I think there are some guys that are figuring out how to deal with that and making it a little more difficult for him to overwhelm guys like he did last year. But he's still a blast to watch. There's a ton of great guys. I mean, Lance Palmer still firing on all cylinders. Again, some people don't like that style, but that, you know, in a lot of ways, that was my style too. So I understand, and I like watching him fight. Again, he uses his wrestling very, very well. He's got great power and great gas tank. So I mean, there's a number of guys in there this season that have been fun to watch.
And, you know, I'm glad you brought up Ray Cooper. And this just shows how awesome of an analyst that you are, that you transitioned without even having me ask you to transition to the next question. But I wanted to bring up Ray Cooper because, I mean, I feel he's been different, but you feel like he's still the same kind of guy, because it's interesting. This season, he really was the show stealer last year. Everybody loved watching Ray Cooper fight last year. But this year, he fights his cousin, Zane Kamaka. He wrestles him. A little different than we expected. Then the second fight, Doomsday knocks him out. Not something expected. I was going to throw out the idea, has he changed at all? You know, like, I remember talking to him in the beginning of last year. He's very curmudgeon and not as happy. Then halfway through, I talked to him much happier because he was making money. I mean, could have success change him a little bit, you know, like the Zane Kamaka strategy? Or do you feel he's really the same guy, like you said? People are just wise to him now.
Yeah, well, I think the Zane Kamaka thing was a little bit different because it was family, because it was some emotions wrapped up in that fight, in that matchup, in some of the smack talking that was going on. Yeah. And I think that affected him a little bit. But I also think he realizes what he did in the finals wrong last year. He was a little too overzealous, a little too, he just overcommitted. He was frivolous with his energy a little bit. He spent a bunch of energy that maybe he could have used to finish stronger. And so I think we're seeing a little bit different tactic. He's a little more tempered. He's using his wrestling a little more instead of just coming out trying to knock guys out. Right. I think that's a good move by him. I think that's going to pay off eventually, but there's going to be an adjustment there. And I think guys recognize if they take a little steam out of him early, or get under his skin a little bit, push those buttons a little bit, get him to spend some energy early, that they may have an advantage going into some later rounds. So, I think he is the same guy. I think he's trying to be a little more focused, a little smarter about how he's approaching some of these opponents, maybe giving them a little more credit than he gave them last season. Now, anytime you go out and you knock out a guy like Jake Shields twice, not once, but twice, you're making a statement. And I think that's why he kind of took the league by storm last year. And let's be honest, the whole story with him and his dad, that family, his dad fighting Shields 14 years prior. I mean, that whole thing was really interesting, and I think led to a lot of that notoriety and hype with him last season. Uh, and maybe that's gone this season. We'll see. But he's still a formidable opponent.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to talk about the players. You have been revered throughout your career for having a great mind for the sport, be it as a fighter, as a coach, as an analyst. What is some of the strategy you would employ if you were about to do what several of these fighters will do in October and possibly fight twice in one night? Would you handle that first fight, first round, much differently than you would a normal fight for 3 rounds? Would you do some advanced preparation on opponents you could face in the semis at all? Or maybe not, you don't want to think about this stuff. Would you change your warm up going into each fight? What are some of the things that if
Yeah.
you had to deal with it, what would you do?
Those are intriguing questions and interesting things about fighting
Mm-hmm.
twice in one night.
Yep.
Obviously, haven't done that since really early in my career. It was always a challenge. You never know who is going to advance. So you could prepare for whoever you think is going to advance, but you really don't know. So you're really kind of winging it that second fight for the night.
Mm-hmm.
You got to go out and just kind of impose your will and fight your style. Obviously, with a 2-round fight and the criteria kind of weighing heavily on who comes out strong in that first round, I think you have to go out in that first round and make sure you secure that first round. Go out and do what you have to do. You talk about Ray Cooper and him wrestling more this season. I think that, guys like Lance Palmer and Ray Cooper, they're going to come out and take a guy down, hold him down, hover over him, damage him, make him work from the bottom, and secure that first round victory. So they're going into that second round, they don't have to worry so much. The criteria is already on their side. You don't take a lot of damage. We could wrestle all day long. That's just how we're conditioned. So I think I like that style. Certainly that's an approach I would take to fighting twice in one night, is go out, secure that first round, get that criteria part out of the way, and then go out hard the second round too, and try and win the fight outright. But, I think sustain as little damage as possible. Don't get reckless. Don't get crazy. You got to have a good, solid performance, and then carry you into the semifinals where you can let it hang out, do what you have to do to get into the finals and get into the money.
Now, I asked Ray Sefo a similar question last week. Are there any fights, either be it in the quarters or hypothetical semifinals, that you're really looking forward to, just on a fan, fighter perspective? For me, Nate Andrews versus Chris Wade fascinates me. I thought that first fight was great. To fight again in a rematch in the quarters is great. The possibility for a second year row of Lance Palmer versus Andre Harrison in the semis, if they both win, it's very, very fascinating. Are there certain matchups for you that you're like, I can't wait for this shit?
Yeah, well, those are absolutely two that I'm excited to see, and I always feel like the onus is on the guy that won the first fight. What's he going to change?
Yep.
You're taking literally a wild ass guess as to what that guy's going to change to get a different outcome. You really have no ideas what he sees or what he thinks he might see or what he might correct or come out and do different in the second fight. So those are interesting matchups. I know Chris Wade feels like he got robbed last year. I understand why he feels that frustration, but in analyzing the fight, he did hit Nathan Schultz with a lot of stuff, but didn't back Nathan up once. Nathan just kept plodding forward no matter what Chris threw at him. Chris is an exciting fighter. He's another one that just lets it hang out there. He's wide open. He's fun to watch. I'd like to see him, and you're seeing him temper his style a little bit too. Not be quite as reckless, not be quite as crazy. Use his wrestling abilities a little bit more to secure some of those victories, which is something I think he needs to do. But those are both great matchups and fun to see those kind of rematches.
You had a similar path through this sport to someone like Kayla Harrison. Not exact, but it's similar in that Olympic level wrestler. She's Olympic level judo, having to learn the striking aspects of the sport and use it effectively to get your hands on an opponent. Tell me how you feel her striking development has come along so far over her first 5 fights, and tell me the dangers going in there against a high level striker like Jenna Fabian in her semifinals bout.
Yeah, well, that's going to be interesting. Number one, Jenna's very, very tall and rangy and a very, very good striker. I don't think anybody's been able to go out now and really put one on Kayla yet.
No.
And I think everybody's excited or anxious to see how Kayla deals with that the first time that she gets cracked. And there's a fair chance that Jenna Fabian's going to crack her in that matchup. I love her diligence. Kayla Harrison is as diligent a person as I've ever seen. The people she's working out with, the partners she's training with, the coaches that are steering her, I mean, she learns something each and every time she goes out
Mm-hmm.
there. I've talked to her a little bit about, how hard she is on herself. Nobody's harder on ourselves than we are.
Right.
That's the truth. And her striving for that perfection, she was letting those emotions and those things kind of get in the way of her going out and just being effective. And we kind of had that conversation with her. I said, F being perfect.
Yeah.
Be effective.
Yep.
Forget being perfect. It's no such thing. Go
Mm-hmm.
out and be effective. And as long as you walk away with the victory, who cares how you got that done? Do the
Mm-hmm.
best you can. And that made her smile. She liked that kind of analogy of
Yeah.
what was going on. Um, Always excited to see her perform because you just see all these new things that she's adding to her game, new abilities and she's really kind of coming into her stride now. Obviously, I can't imagine the pressure. I mean,
Yeah.
literally the whole weight division has been built to
Mm-hmm.
showcase her and her abilities. And, tough to park 2 gold medals to the side, clear your head
Yeah.
and not, deal with that expectation and that target on your back. But she's doing a great job.
Is there a fighter, or two, or three, or four in these playoffs you feel viewers should really keep an eye on as a dark horse? There are the obvious favorite. There are the guys that have the reputation or they're the high seeds, but some fighters that really need to be watched. Like I mentioned Nate Landry. I feel like maybe he could be another one. Maybe Alex Gilpin. Are there certain guys you feel that could to watch out for? They could really surprise in these playoffs.
I think Gilpin is definitely one to watch for. I think he has a ton of ability. I think it took him a fight to kind of get his feet under him and really know what to expect with this organization. And it's a big show.
Yeah.
And I don't really feel like he has a ton of experience in a bigger show, but I think he has a ton of ability and a lot of slick tricks and things that he can bring to the fights for sure. He's definitely one to watch. Atayev. I mean, guy's got ridiculous horsepower. He's 40 years old. He's got a ton of experience. Strangely, kind of, we watched him last season. That first fight, he looked flat. Spawn beat him up, but then we kind of seen him come into his own. Sean O'Connell felt the wrath, the power, when Sean met him. So, even though he's been up and down a little bit this season too, I still think he's one to watch. He's one to be aware of because he's just got ridiculous power and a ton of experience.
You built your legendary career on your success at light heavyweight and heavyweight, like I mentioned. If you had to put money down right now on what seems like, who do you put down as the likely finals in those two divisions? What's your gut telling me? What's your gut telling you about who do you think can make it? Because it feels like outside of Emiliano Sordi, light heavyweight's very wide open, but even he had a so-so year last year, so you never know.
Yeah, Sordi has really kind of come on, and I think he won a fight or two this season that I don't think anybody expected him to win it, and certainly not win it the way he won it.
Yeah.
So he's really come on, and he's probably your favorite going in, but he's going to have his work cut out for him. There's some tough guys in that division. There are no walkovers in that division. Megalesh, I mean, honestly, if he humbles himself a little bit, doesn't just assume he's going to go out and pull everybody to the ground and submit everybody. He's got a ton of great skills, and he's got a full boat. He's got everything he needs to be victorious. I think if he focuses less on just trying to submit guys, go out and fight guys, the submissions will come. Create scrambles, create things, then the submissions will present themselves. He's got to be a guy. I mean, if you're matched up against him, you better tie it on because, especially early, he's going to be very, very tough to deal with. So there's some exciting matchups there for sure.
What about heavyweight? What do you see? I'm a big fan. I love Kelvin Tiller, a guy like that. Like, are you seeing any likely favorites who stand out right now, at least?
Well, Kelvin brings the horsepower.
Yep.
and you look at a guy like that and assume that maybe the ground isn't necessarily his strength, but he's got some great submission skills. He does some great things on the ground too. He's a well-rounded package, and I like the kid. I mean, he's fun. His mom's fun. He just brings a whole bunch to the game. He's definitely going to be the guy to watch. But there's some big, strong guys there. Alex Nicholson comes every single time. I think, again, getting him to pull back a little, not be quite so aggressive and put himself in harm's way sometimes. And he's figuring that out. We've had that discussion. He says that, and we've seen that in some of his fights. He's put himself in better positions and been willing to go longer distances and not really, be as reckless as he can be sometimes. So I always, again, I love guys that bring that kind of intensity to the fight.
Now you mentioned a couple of times now people giving advice and stuff like that. I mean, is that something you always get, but even more so now that you're around the PFL, hanging around as an analyst? Are fighters coming up like, let me get the thoughts of Randy Couture? I mean, this guy's a legend. Like, are people coming to you like, what do you think about? Does that happen often?
Well, it happens. Yeah, I mean, people want your perspective. They want to know what you see. I always try to, first of all, always try to be positive, and always, you know, I'm willing to give my opinion, and that it's take it for what it's worth. But I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to be positive. I'm never going to be negative. So, it's funny because I get a lot of guys asking me about relationship advice too.
Really?
Like,
Okay,
yeah,
fair
really.
enough.
I've been divorced 3 times. You might want to think about doing the opposite of what I tell you.
Yeah. I talked to Ray.
And maybe fighting is the same thing. But,
I mean, it is a lifelong work, so I mean, I can see that in both ways. And I talked to Ray Sefo about it last week. But what are your thoughts on so many fighters missing weight this season? Someone missed weight at every event, which is all the more surprising because last season, like, only a few guys missed weight. It really didn't happen that much last year. You've been in this sport for so many years. You do your amateur wrestling even longer. You cut weight tons of times. Never had really issues with it. Is it a lack of discipline? Is it a misunderstanding of how the PFL season works, which Ray kind of suggests that maybe guys aren't understanding? You kind of gotta stay in camp all the time. You can't blow up and down. You can't weight cut the last 2 weeks or something like this. Like, or is this season 2 just a weird weight cut anomaly, and season 3, like, nobody misses weight?
Yeah, it's really hard to put my finger on one thing because I think every one of those situations was individual and different. I think Zane Kanaka not making weight twice was a function of him just not prepared, maybe not acting in a very professional manner. It's not the first, those 2 times is not the first time he's not made weight in the past too. So, but I think every one of those circumstances was a little bit different. They weren't all the same. You can't just chalk it up to one thing, unfortunately. We're professional fighters. This is what we do. You got it. And especially when you're being asked to turn around every 6 or 7 weeks, you got to be on top of that. And that should make it easier to make weight, because you never really have time to get that far out of shape. It's not like you're taking months off between fights and you blow up. And I think it's one of those things that maybe younger fighters make that mistake. There's that, celebration or commiseration, depending on how your fight went. And then you're off for 4 or 5, maybe 6 months. Yeah. And you get, and then, now another fight signed. Now I got to climb back up in shape. I think older fighters just kind of keep that fitness level at a much more level pace and never really blow up. And I think that's why you see a lot of the older guys don't get injured as much. It's in that climbing back up in shape that injuries occur. It also makes it a struggle. You have to recognize and be realistic about how much water weight you're really cutting. If you're a 160-pound guy, maybe a 170-pound guy, if you're cutting more than 10% of your body weight in water, it's too much. You're going to feel it. You're not going to perform. And you have the potential that you're going to fail trying to make weight. You're going to get close, but then not make weight, not make it, and that's going to cost you 20% of your purse if you even get to fight at all. I mean, it's not rocket science. And I think it's a very American thing, too, for the most part. We as Americans have this mentality like, oh, my gosh, I'm great at 170. Imagine what I'd be like at 155. It doesn't work that way. You're going to be a completely different human being at 155. You're not going to carry the same mass. Everything's going to change cutting that much weight. It's not healthy. How about just focus on the tactics, the technique, and the conditioning, and fight at the weight that you're at? It is an issue. It's not just the PFL. It's an issue across the board in the entire sport. So we did have some anomalies this year, some guys for different reasons that didn't make weight, and it's frustrating. It changes the card. Now all of a sudden this big shuffle goes on. Guys get new opponents literally the day before the fight. Some guys get out, they're out completely, and they don't get a chance to make a living. It's really, really unfortunate. And especially in a PFL format where those points are important. the progression into the postseason and getting a shot at that title and the big purse. That's what really sucks about it. So I appreciate Ray taking a hard stance on it,
Yes. Yes.
cutting these guys loose and like, look, it's just not going to
Yep.
fly. We hired you as a professional fighter. The first thing you do as a professional fighter is you make
Yep.
weight. It's that simple. So I think Ray took the right tact. I think he's drawing the line in the sand and saying, look, this just isn't going to fly as a promotion. It sets the tone. All those guys from now on know, hey, he's going to cut me. He's going to let me go if I
Yep.
don't make weight. So I think that's the right approach.
Now I have several questions just about the sport in general, because I mean, you've always shown to have a great understanding of the sport, the business, a great mind for it. Now, careers like yours made UFC titles really mean something. It made winning it a really important thing. What are your thoughts on how the promotion, the UFC, has handled their championships over the last few years, where there's a bunch of interim titles all the time? Now we got a random BMF title coming in a couple of weeks. Like, what are your thoughts on? In my opinion, the UFC title is kind of being diminished in the last 4 or 5 years.
I agree 100%. I think they've strayed away. Why have rankings?
Yeah.
You're not following them. You're not using them. It's literally become the WWE model. Who is the best antic? Who is the best publicity stunt? Who talks the best smack? That's the guy that's going to get rewarded. That's the guy that's going to get the nod. That's WWE all the way. That's not prize fighting. That's not what I set out to do 20 years ago in 1997. I set out to be a prize fighter and to be the best in my division, and they're in a lot of ways, I agree, diminishing what that means nowadays. And I think part of the problem is the promoter and the sanctioning body should not be the same guy. It's too much power. That needs to be separated, just like it is in boxing. The sanctioning bodies are regulated by the athletic commissions and have a very specific set of criteria that takes place to be a sanctioning body, to create titles and set rankings. And those are adhered to. There are criteria, and if you're not gonna jump 3 and 4 to get to, to get to 2 or 1 without that criteria having been met. And unfortunately, at the end of the day, boxing's still a business too, and so is MMA. But putting all that power in the promoter's hand, who has a stable of fighters, if you want to be ranked and fight for a title, you're going to sign this lousy contract. You're going to sign away all your ancillary rights in just about every category, and you're going to do what I asked you to do, or I'm going to cut you. And there's another guy standing there that wants that opportunity. It's too much power, and that's the real flaw and problem in our sport right now. One of the reasons why I love this format in the PFL. It's a meritocracy. Yeah. You can talk smack all you want. You can create publicity stunts and antics and all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, you still got to go out in that cage, score points, win fights to advance, to move on to the postseason. And again, win fights to move on to that championship title fight.
And speaking of titles, to continue on and the diminishing of it, like, what are your thoughts on guys winning a title, barely defending it, and going to another division to fight for another title? I mean, what is your opinion? Would you have loved if, when you were around, you would have got some more opportunities like that? Or do you appreciate what people like Demetrius Johnson, Anderson Silva, George St. Pierre did with these long, John Jones, long extended reigns, dominant reigns, legacy-setting reigns as a champion, defending their title a ton of times?
I think guys should be allowed to do that, to win it in 2 divisions and defend it in 2 divisions. And, especially as close as some of the divisions are. It's not like a huge weight cut. I don't see any reason why that can't occur. So I don't really have a huge issue with that. Guys, Conor held it in 2 divisions. Daniel Cormier was the champ in 2 divisions. Defend it in 2 divisions. That's fine. If you can do that and you want to do that, why not? So I don't have a huge issue with that. I don't think that takes away from the light heavyweight and heavyweight division, because Daniel Cormier is holding both those belts. If he can defend it and make both those weights, which he could do pretty easily, I think, why not? It's been done in boxing before too. So I don't have a huge issue with that at all.
When people talk about the greatest heavyweights of all time, your name is also often mentioned. What is your feeling of Stipe Miocic and Daniel Cormier? Are they in that category where they should get consideration in that all-time category with yourself, Nogueira, Cain Velasquez, Fedor? Or are they guys that really are all-timers, if not maybe the best ever to do it?
I mean, it's such a subjective thing.
Yeah.
Things mean more to some people than
Yeah.
others. Coming up even with a criteria to develop a list like that would be a
Yeah.
challenge. There's so many variables and so many things. Those guys are amazing fighters. Should they be on that list?
Mm.
Absolutely. And it goes into, you know, pound for pound, the same discussion. It's really hard to come up with a criteria
Yeah.
that accounts for everything, that accounts for all the variables. It's a difficult thing. It's just, every individual is going to have his own opinion on what matters and what should be counted
Mm.
there. And, that's what makes it interesting. That's why we love this
Yeah.
sport.
Now, your fight with James Toney always fascinated me. I think it was in its time underappreciated for how truly special it was, and nothing like it has really happened since. And I adore James Toney for even getting in the cage and doing it. Money problems or whatever consisting on. But going into
Yeah.
that fight, how was your confidence level? Did you feel like it would be a winnable fight? Like if you can do it, he's not going to have enough time to train, or was there, you're smart, you understand the strategy, but was there concern like this guy's a great heavyweight boxer, just a great boxer, multiple weight classes. I got to be careful. This guy can catch me.
That's absolutely, that was my perspective on it, for sure. I watched tape of him boxing, and I was already familiar with his boxing prowess. The real question was, how much MMA was he going to really be able to learn in 4 months? I've been around a lot of fighters and guys just starting out, and that learning curve is pretty sharp. It's pretty steep. How diligent was James Toney really going to be in learning some ground fighting and learning to defend himself there and be able to force guys to fight him where he needed them to fight him, which was in that striking zone. I wasn't silly enough to think that I had anything to prove there. I wasn't going to stand around in front of him and prove that I could box with him or prove that, us MMA fighters are just as good at striking as anybody else. Because I had a lot of respect for his ability to roll his shoulder and throw a hook.
Yep.
I mean, nobody did it better than that. I mean, he's literally phenomenal at that technique. And I didn't want to stand around and feel that. No way. I wanted to see if he could defend a takedown. Yeah. If we hit his back, would he be able to use the guard, use his legs, do some of the things that we are known for in MMA? Because at the end of the day, it wasn't a boxing match. It was a mixed martial arts fight. And in a lot of ways, they're apples and oranges. So, yeah, kudos to him for putting his body or money where his mouth was. And he definitely took the smack talk to a whole new level, as only a boxer could probably do. But I took the fight very, very seriously. I think that's why I got the nod to be the guy to take that fight, because I think they knew I was going to take it seriously. Right. I wasn't going to play around with him or take it nonchalantly and play around in the striking realm with him, because he's a very, very good striker.
We all know you have also made the transition into acting. Tell me about some of the work you have in pre-production, post-production now that, we should really start looking out for in maybe this year, 2020. And I've seen some rumors. Is Expendables 4 coming or what? I need another one.
Well, I did just get the Expendables script, the new script, about a month ago, and read it. It's very good.
Is it the best of the
four?
Very
yet? Good. It certainly has the potential to be the best of the four.
Yeah. Do you get a bigger role? You need a bigger role in these movies.
Toll Road is definitely back, and Toll Road will have his parts in the film. Anytime you're dealing with a huge ensemble cast like that, it's tough to make sure everybody gets their moments. I mean, I will definitely have my moments in that. I'm excited to be back in it. They were originally going to shoot it this fall, but it sounds like it's going to happen next spring. Okay. I think it's going to be very interesting. I think people are going to love it, and it's going to be everything you expect. All the old guys coming back, and a very interesting, in some ways, timely storyline. I don't want to give away anything, but I think people are going to dig it. We should start production and start filming here next spring. It's going to take at least 3 months to film, and then it's probably going to take a good 9 to 12 months in post-production to get all the CG and everything else in line. So I would say 2021 for release in theaters, and I think it's going to be huge. Everybody's going to love it.
What else do you have you been working on? I mean, are we going to get like a Randy Couture romantic comedy, something like that? Really show the chops?
Yeah,
Are you
I
looking to
hope.
get in a
I
Marvel
just
movie? Maybe that seems to be what everybody wants to do right now.
I've read for several roles in some of the Marvel movies and come very,
Really?
very close, but I haven't landed one of those roles
Mhm.
yet. I've got one out on Netflix actually two out on Netflix right now. One called The Hard
Okay.
Way with Michael Jai White.
Oh,
A
nice.
lot of fun, action film. The other one's a World War II movie, a D-Day movie,
Okay.
and actually Chuck Liddell makes a cameo in that one as
Nice.
well. So you can find that one with Nick Cage's son
Mhm.
is kind of the lead in
Okay.
that film. So it was a lot of fun to do, and anything to promote veterans and our service members. I was happy to be involved in it. It's a period piece, which is always fun too.
Mhm.
So that one's out on Netflix as well. Just finished one in May and June that was a lot of fun. It's called Manson Brothers Midnight Zombie
All
Massacre.
right.
It's a horror, but it's also a comedy. So I think a
Okay.
lot of people, it has all the makings of one of those cult
Yeah.
classics that people are just going to love.
Mhm.
A lot of tongue in cheek, a lot of fun. Boss Rutan is actually in that
Ah,
film
El
with me,
Guapo.
and so we had a blast working together. He's always a blast to be around. So, um, yeah, that's what's out right now. What's going on? Kind of winding down for the year now. PFL going on strong here in October, and November, December. Not a lot happens in the movie industry as we roll into the
Yeah.
holidays. So, um, probably not much else on the film front until next year for me.
Could you say what roles in Marvel movies you read for?
Uh, I was up for a major role in Deadpool 2, came really close to landing
Oh.
it, and then didn't get it. I read for Ant-Man. I read
Oh.
for I read for several of
Mm.
them. It just been real close in a couple of occasions, but I think just got to keep plugging away,
Yeah.
keep working. Success breeds
Yep.
success. So the more I get to work, the more I learn, the more I get myself out there, the more chances I'm going to land one of these roles eventually.
Now, one last question, and again, perfect transition because you mentioned our veterans stuff like that. I want to talk about the PFL. Now offering support and help with your Extreme Couture GI Foundation. That's been going on for 10 years, from what I've recently read. Can you tell me about that? How have they been helping with that? The foundation, what's going on late with that, and that general story, what's going on with you and the PFL.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, certainly honored that the PFL decided to get behind my foundation. The PFL has been doing this all season. Uh, their motto is "What do you fight
Mm-hmm.
for?" And we did 3 shows in Long Island. We did 3 shows in Atlantic City in the regular season. In both of those cities, they found a foundation to get behind and give some love to, show some support to, give some exposure to. And now they're coming for the 3 playoff fights at the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, and they've decided that my foundation, the Extreme Couture GI Foundation, was the one they wanted to get behind. So certainly pleased and honored that they chose my foundation. We've been running this foundation for 12 years. Our mission is to raise some funds and awareness about these soldiers that have been wounded in action and are in transition. They're in the hospital getting fitted for prosthetics, learning to walk again, going through surgeries, sometimes for up to 2 years, that transition
Wow.
period is. So the last thing I want them worrying about is
Right.
finances. They got caregivers, their mom, their dad, their wife that come down and stay in the Fisher house with them while they're going through that process. And I've heard a bunch of horror stories, cars being repossessed, houses being
Mm-hmm.
lost, jobs being lost, things like that.
Yeah.
So just trying to raise some funds to take that stress off their back while they're in that process. And we've expanded that a little bit. We realize that not all the wounds that these guys are dragging around show on the outside.
Right.
Obviously, the PTSD and suicide rate is
Yeah.
ridiculous with our veterans. We need to turn that around. So connecting some of these guys with counseling, connecting, obviously the MVP program comes to mind. And we're getting vets together in 4 gyms across the country right now, working out once a week for free,
Okay.
and then spending some time talking and just kind of reuniting with the veteran community in where you live. And that's been a very, very powerful thing with MVP, emerging vets and players too. So uh, synergy in all these smaller organizations, two of which I'm heavily involved in, creates a bigger footprint and more vets. We help as many as we can.
Right.
So it's been fun, powerful, and I'm very proud that the PFL has decided to support my foundation There'll be a 50-50 raffle at every one of those events in Las Vegas. Half the proceeds will go to the winner, and half the proceeds will go to my foundation
Nice.
for wounded. So very
Is
cool.
there, information on the websites people can go to, numbers, social media they can go to?
Absolutely, absolutely. You can find our calendar and look at our upcoming events at xcgif.org. That's Extreme Couture GI Foundation.org. The calendar's there if you want to donate. Even if you can't make an event, you can donate there online. Tells you what our next deal is in October. We're doing a skeet shoot,
Okay.
as well as the three PFL fights that are in Vegas, all in October. November 9th, we've got our 11th Operation Knockout with Tough Enough. It's a amateur fight night with Tough Enough, and all the proceeds go to my foundation. That'll be out at Sam's Town, I believe, November 9th.
All right.
So, yeah, we're rolling, keeping things going. Obviously, we're in LA, Las Vegas, Chicago, and Atlanta with MVP, with merging vets and players. So if you're a vet and you're in any one of those cities, or you're a retired athlete and you're in any one of those cities, come get a free workout in and connect and get reconnected and speak to people that are speaking the same language that they understand you. So